The 2026 World Cup was supposed to be bigger. More countries, more matches, more stories, more of the world inside the tournament. And in one sense, that promise has been delivered. 48 teams, 104 matches, 16 host cities across Canada, Mexico, and the United States. This is the largest World Cup ever staged. But now that the tournament has reached the round of 32, the expansion has revealed its first real weakness. The bracket is no longer simple. This is not just a complaint from people who dislike change. This is a structural problem inside the new tournament. The World Cup has added a knockout round that did not exist before, and it has added a third-place qualification system that can make the road ahead difficult to read in real time. The result is a tournament that gives more teams hope, but gives fans a much harder map to follow. And that is the biggest problem exposed by the new round of 32. The basic format sounds easy enough. FIFA expanded the tournament to 48 teams. Those teams were placed into 12 groups of 4. Each team plays 3 group matches. The top 2 teams in every group advance automatically. That gives you 24 teams. Then come the 8 best third-place teams. Those 8 teams also move into the knockout phase, which creates the new 32-team bracket. On paper, that rule is not difficult to say. Top 2 go through, plus the 8 best third-place teams. But a World Cup is not experienced on paper. It is experienced live, match by match, table by table, goal by goal. And that is where the problem appears. Because third-place qualification does not just depend on one group. It depends on comparing teams across 12 different groups, often after different opponents, different schedules, and different match contexts. A goal in one city can change the route of a team in another. A late equalizer in one group can affect the opponent waiting in a different part of the bracket. A team that has already played may have to wait for results somewhere else before knowing whether its tournament is alive. That makes the format dramatic, but it also makes it harder to understand. BBC Sport put a number on that complexity. Because 8 third-place teams progress to the last 32, there are 495 possible combinations involving those third-place qualifiers. 495. That number matters because it shows this is not just a feeling. The new bracket really does contain a much wider set of possible paths than fans are used to tracking. In the older World Cup format, the knockout tree was easier to explain. Win your group, finish second, and your route became clearer. There were still surprises, still shocks, still drama. But the tournament map was more direct. In 2026, the map can feel more like a control room. You're not just watching your group. You are watching other groups, third-place rankings, goal difference, tiebreakers, possible assignments, and the way one result can ripple across the bracket. For serious fans, that can be fascinating. For casual fans, it can be exhausting. And the World Cup needs both groups. It needs the hardcore audience that will study every table, but it also needs the millions of viewers who turn up because the story is easy to follow. That is why clarity matters. A great knockout bracket should feel instant. You should be able to look at it and understand the road. You should know who is alive, who is waiting, and what each result means. The round of 32 gives the World Cup more football, but it also gives the World Cup more explanation. And once a tournament needs constant explanation, it risks losing one of its greatest strengths, simplicity. The second problem is even more uncomfortable. When a bracket becomes this conditional, it can create strange incentives. The warning sign came before the knockout stage had even fully settled. Major outlets were already discussing scenarios around Austria, Algeria, and Spain. Sky Sports asked why Austria might prefer to lose its final Group J match against Algeria. ESPN later reported that Algeria and Austria dismissed the idea of trying not to win in order to avoid Spain. Sporting News also explained how different results could affect Spain's opponent. The important point is not to accuse any team of throwing a match. That would be unfair without direct evidence. The important point is that the question existed at all. When a tournament format makes serious outlets ask whether winning could create the worst route, the format has a perception problem. Football teams are supposed to want the best result. Fans are supposed to understand why a win helps. The emotional logic of a tournament is supposed to be simple. Win, advance, improve your position. But in a complicated bracket, that logic can become blurred. Sometimes a better group finish can place a team on a harder path. Sometimes a slightly worse result can appear to create a more favorable matchup. Sometimes the bracket does not reward teams in a way that feels obvious to the audience. That does not mean the system is corrupt. It does not mean the tournament is ruined. But it does mean the format has created awkward questions. And those questions matter because the World Cup is not only a competition. It is a global story. The story has to be legible. If viewers need a predictor tool, a live table, a bracket calculator, and a tiebreaker explainer just to understand who might play who next, then the tournament has gained scale at the cost of clarity. Now, there is another side to this. The expanded format is not only a problem, it also creates opportunity. More nations get World Cup matches. More fans get to see their country involved. More underdogs get a route into the knockout stage. More players get a moment on the biggest stage in football. For countries outside the traditional elite, the round of 32 can be a historic doorway. A third-place route may be the difference between going home and creating a national memory. More knockout places mean more fan bases stay emotionally invested for longer. That is real, and it should not be dismissed. The problem is the trade-off. The 2026 World Cup gives more teams a chance, but makes the overall shape harder to read. It creates more knockout football, but also creates more conditional paths. It gives more countries hope, but gives the tournament less instant clarity. So the question is not whether expansion is good or bad in one sentence. The question is whether the World Cup can remain easy to follow while becoming this big. And the round of 32 is the first real stress test, because this is the moment where the format stops being an idea and becomes a bracket. This is where the 12 groups become 32 teams. This is where third-place calculations become actual knockout routes. This is where the tournament has to prove that more does not simply mean more confusing. For FIFA, the benefit is obvious. More matches, more markets, more host cities, more global involvement, a bigger event across 3 countries. For fans, the answer is more complicated. If your country is one of the teams that sneaks through in third place, the new format may feel brilliant. If your team gets an unexpected knockout chance, the round of 32 may feel like a gift. But if you're trying to understand the bracket as a whole, the format can feel like work. And that is the central tension of this World Cup. It is bigger than ever, but not necessarily clearer than ever. It is more inclusive, but also more complicated. It has more stories, but a harder structure. The Football Files verdict is this. The round of 32 has not broken the World Cup. It may still produce incredible matches, historic upsets, and unforgettable moments. But it has exposed the cost of expansion. The cost is clarity. A World Cup bracket should feel like a road. In 2026, it can feel like a puzzle. And that may be the biggest challenge facing the new format. Not whether it can create drama. It already can. Not whether it can include more countries. It already does. The real question is whether the world's biggest football tournament can stay simple enough for the world to follow. Because the World Cup has become bigger than ever. But the round of 32 has shown the price of that size. More teams, more matches, more possibilities, and maybe less instant clarity. If you want the next Football Files dossier, subscribe because this new format is only getting more interesting from here.